Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rundown, where we talk about 2A news and conservative views. I will be your host today, Craig DeLuz, coming at you from the West Coast, the left coast, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras. And I want to thank you for joining us today on Taco Tuesday.
It's raining tacos from out of the sky. Tacos, no need to ask why. Just open your mouth and close your eyes. It's raining tacos.
It's raining tacos out in the street. Tacos, all you can eat. Lettuce and shells, cheese and meat. It's raining tacos. Yum, 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 yummity yum. It's like a dream.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us on Taco Tuesday. It is a pleasure to have you here. Mike is not going to be joining us today, which means that there's more room for conversation between us. So do me a favor. If you are watching us live, that's 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, make sure to comment. If you're watching us on Rumble, I'm following you, our links or our comments on Rumble. If you're watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, I'm following them all. So all you got to do, chime in, let us know what's up, let us know what you think about the stories that we're talking about, or if there's a story that you'd like us to talk about, and we will make sure if you got something interesting to say or an interesting question, we'll make sure to go ahead and get your comments on the program. All right, let's go ahead and get into it today. But before we do, you know what we got to do? Got to give a quick shout out to our sponsors. And we're going to start off with Hitman Industries. You can find them at hitmanindustries.net. If you own an AR, if you recently purchased, I'm saying, if you recently purchased an AR, chances are you already have one of their barrels. They have rifle and pistol caliber barrels available for you today. And by the way, just so you know, if you're a first-time responder, or if you're a first responder and you've never bought from them before, guess what? You get a discount. Just make sure you let them know that you're a first responder. That's hitmanindustries.net. Then we've got the California Republican Assembly working to help elect conservatives at all levels of government, from school board all the way up to President of the United States. Check them out today. It's cragop.org. That's cragop.org. If you want to be a part of California's future today, join CRA. And then we've got Hog Holsters, that's HAWG Holsters, helping Americans wear guns. No matter what gun, no matter what firearm you have, no matter what accessories you may have, lights, optics, whatever you may have, trust me, they have a setup for you. Inside the waistband, outside the waistband, trust me. Check them out today at hogholsters.com. Make sure you use the discount code THERUNDOWN. It's all caps, no spaces, just like it is right up there, all one word, all caps, no spaces, one word, and you'll get a discount on us. Check them out today. That's Hog Holsters. And then finally, all things tactical. I'm talking boots, I'm talking glasses, I'm talking hats, I'm talking backpacks, water bottles, whatever you're looking for. All things tactical, except the gun, you can find at uscombatgear.com. Veteran owned and operated, great selection, fast shipping, excellent prices. Check them out today. Once again, that's uscombatgear.com. All right, let us break into today's news stories. And we're going to start off. This was not initially our top news story until I came across the story, and I needed to talk to you about this. And this is why this is vitally important, because you've heard us talking about this whole issue of, in particular, of gender identity, and basically the work that's being done to help basically trans our kids. Is the lack of a better term. That's the term I've heard people been using, but it's really the idea of you have society. You have not just society, you have society, you have academia, you have our schools, everybody pushing the concept of becoming transgender on our society, in particular on our children, right? And what we have seen in places like right here in California, you've seen wholesale. You've seen the government, like Gavin Mussolini and just about every Democrat in the California state legislature, pushing the idea of allowing minor children, to undergo what they call gender affirming care. Now, it's not gender affirming care. What it is it's basically how shall we say, sex trait modification. In other words, removing breasts, removing testicles and penises, taking puberty blockers, which in many cases have had some serious side effects. But in any case, whenever we talk about this, we're always seen as, well, you're an extremist, you're this, you're that. Well, guess what, folks? We're not the only ones looking at it now. And I've talked to you about the various different times in which you've seen several European countries have basically said, I don't know if we should be doing this. I don't know that really the data supports the idea of making these things available. Number one, the data wasn't showing that it wasn't reducing suicide, right? It wasn't reducing suicide at all. In fact, they were finding that it wasn't helping psychologically at all. At least there was no data that was supporting it. Well, guess what else there's no data supporting? That's right. There is no data supporting the fact that it's actually, there's no evidence pointing to the fact that it's safe. And that's why England's National Health Service has banned puberty blockers for kids. Now, puberty blockers are banned for kids because there's not enough evidence of safety, England's National Health Service said. Let me read the article. It says here, puberty blockers and gonadotropin-releasing hormone analogs is a class of drugs that suppresses sex hormones, they say in adolescence, but in general, by continually stimulating the pituitary gland. It will now only be available to children in limited ways, such as clinical trials. The NHS's website said puberty blockers are not available to children and young people for gender incongruence or gender dysphoria because there is not enough evidence of safety and clinical effectiveness. So what they're pointing out is this. Number one, they don't know that they're even effective. They're not solving the problem that they're meant to solve. What's the problem that they're supposed to be solved? Someone believes they are one gender. Someone was born one gender and believe that they are actually another, or believe they were born one sex, but they are actually meant to be, like, they believe they were born male and they believe they're actually female, or they're born female and they're actually born male. The idea and the reason they use is they say, well, these people who are dealing with this tend to have a greater likelihood of dealing with suicidal ideation, right? Meaning they're more likely to commit suicide. Well, now they're finding that, guess what? It's not reducing depression. It's not reducing suicidal ideation. It's not dealing with any of the other mental health issues that are related. But what it is, in fact, doing in some cases is actually causing problems. In some cases, sterility. In some cases, osteoporosis, right? It is causing major issues with people, once again, because there was never, ever any long-term study. Anybody who tells you that there was any evidence that this stuff was safe, in particular safe for kids, is lying to you. They were lying to you. There was never any evidence to support the fact that this stuff was safe. Ever. Ever, ever, never. It never existed. And the more people are digging into it, the more they realize that. And they're like, wait a minute, okay, so we don't know if it's safe, and we don't know if it's actually fixing the thing or dealing with or addressing the thing that we wanted it to fix. Why exactly are we doing this again? I don't really understand why exactly we're doing this. Because we shouldn't have been doing it. That's the whole point right there. We never should have been doing this. This should have never been an option for kids. I can't even begin to tell you how angry and frustrating that is. Okay, now I have a comment here in Spanish, and I'm on the thing, so I can't even put it into Google Translate, but it looks like they're trying to get somebody to pay for something. So, something to deal with WhatsApp. Yeah, no, we will be deleting that comment. But I just wanted to say to Luisa Pelez, thank you for tuning in, but please stop. Don't spam the show. Just don't spam the show. That's what happens when you don't have someone available to screen your comments. But anyway, just so y'all know. But I think this is a huge step, because now this is the sort of thing we need to be talking about. Once again, going back to schools. keep in mind, in California, they wanted to make it so that you could lose your children if you refused to acknowledge their quote unquote their gender, their perceived gender, right? They've made it so that you're going to even in fact keep it a secret from parents. Anyway, I just this whole thing is beyond, this whole thing is beyond crazy. The fact that we are having to deal with this these days. But folks, it is what it is. All I will tell you is, and the reason why I keep looking over here is because I just realized that I had not sent it to Rumble yet. I am hoping, okay, well, let's see. It says that that there is a live stream right now going on Rumble. Let's see what it is. I may wind up having, it says we are already live on Rumble. And it's got our old thing here. So anyway, for those of you who are watching us now on Rumble, this is an old template, but we're doing good. We're doing all right. We will go ahead and I'll update all of this information later for you in terms of the titles and everything. But once again, I apologize. That's what happens when you're both in front of and behind the camera at the same time. In any case, this is once again, this is logic starting to push back on insanity. Because once again, none of this stuff was based in fact. None of it. None of it was based in what was good for young people, what was good for children. And I will continue to say this. You know what? If you are an adult and you can make a fully informed decision. Now, part of the problem is that the people who've been pushing these surgeries and these medications, they're not fully informing people who are, even adults, are not receiving all of the information. The amount of screening that should take place before you do this life-altering sorts of surgeries and medication, that sort of screening, it's already been documented, is not taking place, even in adults. That having been said, if you are an adult and this is what you want to do, you know what? Your body, your choice. You decide to, but make sure you're making an informed decision. The problem is that I will say this to you. They have been lying to you. If they've been telling you that the puberty blockers are safe, if they've been telling you that the cross-sex hormones are safe, if they've been telling you that that this doesn't have any impact on long-term, they're lying to you. And they've been lying to kids in particular, or parents of children in particular. Right? We should not be allowing children to be experiments. And that's really what this is. And by the way, that's what they're saying. What they're saying is it's only going to be allowed for clinical trials, meaning you have to meet all of the parameters to be in a clinical trial as a child in order to be able to do this. And I'm sorry, but I don't believe we should be experimenting on kids. Not like this. I'm sorry, but I don't. Anyway, this is a big step. It's a major step. I'm glad to see that it's happening. I'm glad to see that it's occurring. I'm glad to see that someone is stepping up. Once again, hopefully, the United States, places like California, will wake up and start to get on board with and see what these other folks are seeing. And that is that the data, at the very least, does not support what you are doing. It doesn't say that it's bad, although, in my opinion, I think there's a lot to say about how wrong it is and how bad it actually is. And I think that the more data we look at, the more we will see how bad it is. But at a very minimum, this sort of medication does not do what you said it was going to do. This we know for a fact. Hopefully, I am hoping once again that sanity will start to rule once again here in these United States. I'm not going to hold my breath, but once again, this is an opportunity for us to expose more of what the left is trying to do and to kind of get this out there. And once again, we have to fight back against this stuff. And I think we need to fight back. And here's the thing, folks. I know some of you are angry, and I am angry that they're experimenting on kids. But there are well-meaning people out there who have bought into the lie, and they need to be exposed to the fact that it is, in fact, a lie. Period. that it is in fact a lie. We ought not be including or talking about and dealing with these sorts of sensitive topics, and in particular with kids, right? Because what's happening is that you're starting to see more and more kids, like record numbers of kids are now identifying as LGBTQ. And it's not that, oh my God, that many kids have always been LGBTQ. What's happening is that you're creating a society, or you're creating an incentive for kids to claim something because it helps them to become accepted. It's the term that I've heard used for it is called a social contagion, right? In other words, well, if that's the cool thing to be, well, then that's what I'm going to be. And that is what is dealing with a lot of kids. In particular, they're saying young women are dealing with this. So anyway, just pointing it out. And that is not, by the way, also not to say that gender dysphoria is not a real thing. It is not something that people are actually dealing with. It's odd to me that it is a psychological issue that we, for some reason, have decided to address physically. I mean, medically, right? When I say physically, medically, I mean, instead of saying, okay, what is going on that has someone born a male believe that they are actually a female? Instead of addressing that, we're going to now try and change the outside or the body to fit, or at least look like what the mind says. If the mind, there are tons of things. If the mind said that you were a chicken, would we start implanting feathers in people? If the mind said that you were a pirate, would we start cutting off people's legs and replacing it with a peg leg or putting on a hook? I don't know. I know those are exaggerations. I know it's a lot more complicated than that, but I think we need to really have a discussion about about how we address this issue, in particular when it comes to children. We can disagree on a lot of things, but I think when it comes to kids, we ought not be doing either social experiments or medical experiments. Just my perspective. All right, now, folks, that brings us to our next story, which was going to be our lead-in story, and this was a key part of the Biden plan, was to fly illegal immigrants into the U.S. And I know some of y'all are might be offended by the use of the term illegals, but had to shorten it so I could make it fit. Anyway, Mayorkas, Alejandro Mayorkas, he is the director of Homeland Security, has basically come out and said, no, look, hey, you know what? Flying 30,000 immigrants a month into the United States is a key part of the border plan, right? It says here, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas defended a controversial policy to allow up to 30,000 migrants to be flown into the United States each month as key elements of the Biden administration's border strategy after it survived a lawsuit. 20 GOP-led states sued over the program for Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans last year, claiming it was unlawful. But U.S. District Judge Drew Tipton, a Trump appointee who has struck down other Biden-era policies, ruled in favor of the administration. Now, I want to point this out, and keep in mind, the thing that was in question was whether or not he had the authority to do this. And under a broader scope of, quote unquote, the asylum policy, they believe that they had the right to do it because, and once again, these are folks who are using the app, right? So they're using the app that Biden administration put out there. And that then, because they had in fact now applied for asylum outside of the United States, now they're flying them into the United States. Now, my thing would be, wait until they've been approved for asylum. This doesn't, the app, just having applied does not mean that you have been approved for asylum. But what's happening is they're using the parole procedure in order to release them into the United States. And once again, that's due to a very loose interpretation of the parole, quote unquote, procedure. But what gets me is, once again, they're flying 30,000, and by the way, this is 30,000 people from those various countries who they're saying are people who can literally claim that they are in fact fleeing and seeking asylum, fleeing an oppressive government. But what gets me here, folks, once again, is when they say that this is a key part of their policy, understand this, and I've explained this ad nauseum, but I'm going to say it one more time. Their goal in this whole thing is not to shut down the border. It's not to keep people from coming into the United States illegally. What they want to do is they want to facilitate it, right? In other words, they want to increase the number of people who are available to process people coming into the United States. They want to say, all right, here's what we're going to do. We know y'all are going to come in, so we just want to be able to give y'all a stamp on the hand as you come in and then release you into the United States so we could say, well, you know, they're here until while they're being processed. By the time they actually get processed, and keep in mind, people are being, I mean, their court dates in some cases are being put out like 8 years. There are people with court dates that have been pushed out 8 years. These are not people who are going to ever, they're going to be well established in the United States before they ever get an asylum hearing. Now, some of them are going to turn out to be phenomenal people. They're going to turn out to be, they're going to be hard workers. Their kids are going to go to college. They're going to do all of these wonderful things that Democrats say all immigrants are. The problem is that is not all immigrants, all illegal immigrants. That's not all of them. We decrease the likelihood of people not being that by actually having them go through the screening process to become legal residents. But we've decided we're going to forego all that. We're going to just let them in. We've decided to do that despite the fact that, you know, in places like California, we have a homeless crisis. We have more homeless people than anywhere else in the United States. We're starting to see increases in unemployment. We're starting to see increases in people being laid off of their jobs here in California. But, you know, that's okay. We can always take in more people, right? No. Look, folks, and once again, I'm going to continue to say this. Their goal in changing the face of the United States is literally by letting anybody and everybody come into the United States. Whether or not they may want the American dream, but if you're not willing to assimilate to American values, then you may have a shot at the American dream, but your children won't. Because if you come to America with the idea of making America like where you came from, well, there's a reason you left where you came from. And that's because things were much better off here in the United States. So maybe, just maybe, you ought to think about that before you start trying to change things. And that's why it's so refreshing when I see studies and when I see polls pointing out how conservative some of these folks who are coming to the United States are. Makes me feel a little bit better. Doesn't make me feel great, but it does make me feel a little bit better. Anyway, folks, we got major issues. And we need to close our southern border. There's no doubt, no about a doubt that. Anyway, moving right along to our next story. Bill requires California schools to hire armed guards. Now, I got to admit, I'm a little skeptical about this bill. And I think this is an idea of a Republican idea gone awry. But give me a second. All right, it says here, legislation would require California schools to have armed officer on campus. Legislation recently introduced by Bill Esley, Republican from Corona, would require school districts and charter schools to hire an armed law enforcement officer to patrol each of its campuses whenever students are present. Current state law allows school districts to determine whether to hire or contract with armed law enforcement officers or unarmed security officers. The current law asks districts to consider using resources allocated for police officers for pupil support services and professional development for school employees on cultural competency or restorative justice if it is more appropriate for their students. So in other words, what they're saying is we're not going to give you any extra money, but we're going to require you to have armed law enforcement officers. Now, I got to tell you, as someone who is a school board member, I can tell you in places like the state of California, there are tons of unfunded mandates that are on schools. Schools are required to do a whole bunch of stuff. And unfortunately, most of that stuff we do not get reimbursed by the state for. We do not get any additional money to do any of the things that schools are required to do. I don't believe that every single school district needs to have an armed guard. What they do need to have is someone on campus who knows and understands. How about someone who's trained? How about someone who's trained on how to use a firearm during an active shooter situation? I don't understand why concealed carry permit holders, who, by the way, undergo about as much firearm training as law enforcement officers do on an annual basis. There is no requirement that law enforcement officers go through firearm training. They test once every 6 months. They shoot 52 rounds downrange, and as long as they are a halfway decent shot, and they don't even really have to be halfway decent, they get requalified. They don't receive any additional training, absolutely none. But yet now they want to require that they get that they be hired full time. So you're talking about, to hire in the state of California, depending on where you're at, you're talking about adding, I don't know, about $120,000 to $150,000 per campus, per site, in order to have a law enforcement officer available on that campus. That's what you're talking about. And by the way, that's no additional funding. They're not getting any additional funding in order to be able to do that. I say no. I have a real issue with that, especially when there's a better option, and the better option is allowing staff who want to be able to conceal carry on campus. But you can even require them to be a part of an active shooter response plan. You can require them to go through training, which, by the way, includes working with law enforcement. All of this can be done, right? Any concern that you would have with a teacher having a firearm is the same for some basically security guard. And that's all you're really hiring is a security guard, someone who's gone through post-training. But if they've gone through post-training, if they're really a law enforcement, why aren't they just in law enforcement? There's a reason. One has to wonder. In any case, I don't know how much, I got issues with this one. I'm sorry. On its face, it just sounds like a bad idea. I don't mind. I mean, if this is the only way in which you're going to get armed people on campus to be able to protect kids, okay. But I think there are other solutions that are better. I think this one is a swing and a miss. And as someone who both is involved in and understands use of force, understands the sort of training that law enforcement goes through, and someone who understands schools and school districts, I feel pretty qualified to say, yeah, no, bad idea. All right. Moving along to our next story. A new study basically points out the 6 most liberal states in these United States. Interesting thing is, I don't think there are any real surprises on here, but would like y'all to I figured you guys would probably want to know. It's kind of cool that it's official. It says here, study discloses 6 most liberal states in the USA in 2024. Every state in the United States has unique political ideology. Continue reading to find out the most progressive states. And they say progressive, liberal, left-wing liberal. Massachusetts. Massachusetts is considered the most liberal state in the USA. A recent Gallup study found 35% of Massachusetts voters are Democrats. Interesting. The highest percentage among all states, leading to a Democrat trifecta. The Senate, State House, and the governor's position in a state that are under Democratic control. Both the Senate and the House of Representatives have a Democrat supermajority, and Massachusetts is in the top spot for the U.S. Then you have Maine. Then you have Washington. Was that Washington State? Washington State is in the top 3. New York is famous for its popularity among liberals and Democrats, even though the state recently lost one vacancy to Republican Party, to the Republican Party in 2022, yada, yada, yada. California, that's where I'm at. California's made the top six, and Oregon. The funny part about this is Oregon actually used to be very, very libertarian, and recently has become less libertarian, very more liberal. When you look at Washington and Oregon, I guess I'll say this: Washington and Oregon are suffering from the Californication of those states. That's right, I call it Californication, meaning Californians have decided that they are going to govern that state or move out of California because the California experiment has not worked for California, and so they've decided that they're going to go and ruin other states. Yeah, that's kind of how folks do it from California. In other words, they move out of California, but they don't take their stinking thinking with them. But they take their stinking thinking with them. And sadly, it negatively impacts where they're at. Anyway, folks, that then brings us to our parting shots. Our parting shots are brought to you by Hog Holsters. Just go to hogholsters.com. Use discount code The Rundown. All caps, no spaces. Get your hog holster today on a discount. All right, our first one here is all three of these, by the way, today are from our friends over at the Babylon Bee. The first one here: millions of British kids forced to live happy, normal, happy lives after UK bans puberty blockers. Meaning, you're not going to get to mess up your life by transitioning. Not as a child, anyway. Not as a child. Okay, and then we've got, due to inflation, Subway introduces the $5 inch-long sandwich. That's a good one. Talk about shrinkflation. Wow, okay. Oh, this next one you're going to love. Kind of along the same lines, I guess. Haitian cannibal gangs pour over U.S. border after seeing how fat Americans are. Ooh, wow, okay, well, I don't know what to say about that. Interesting stuff. All right. Well, folks, that brings us to the end of our show. Giving another quick shout out to our sponsors. If you're looking for rifle or pistol caliber barrels, just go to hitmanindustries.net. If you want to be a part of California's future today, join CRA. Remember to go to Hog Holsters. If you want to get a hog holster, go to hogholsters.com. Use the discount code The Rundown. All caps, no spaces. Get your hog holster on discount today. And then if you're looking for tactical stuff, all things tactical except the gun, go to uscombatgear.com. And with that, we're going to call it a day. We very much appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing the program and encouraging your friends to do the same. We will be back mañana on Hump Day. Y'all take care.